Porcelain cups are manufactured entities that begin as delicate, handmade things. They were sought after by royalty, then robber barons, then upper middle class, then middle class, and then, when their own royalty was spent, only by people watching a reflection of themselves in a televised camera-recorded square. In this way, they are safe to desire and lust for. They are a cartoon, a caricature. They signify nothing and everything at the same time. Porcelain cups begin and stay empty, decorative. They do not covet. They can only be coveted. Some are embossed and others striped with patterns, swirls of a line of barest green for a stem and then a gentle swoosh for a leaf or a center bud, and then each petal in a soft, nearly pastel color, a new age rite of spring, not as powerful as a song, but as quiet as an ineffectual poem. Porcelain cups are not ones to effect change. When makers were producing them in small batches with steadied hands, learned from age and passed down in beautiful, secret, sacred recipes, they were etched into, delicately, on the bottom, with a name, a swirling, small, scrawled name of a creator. And then time became so significant. An etching became a stamp beneath a glaze, trapped, more marked than signed, more marked than honored with creation, a chopping of significance, a felling of meaning and cost. But there are much greater costs, as a charge loses oneself for the sake of everything. Greengrass velvet has been dead for more than 4 days, but it has only been 4 days since Mary Margrave last saw him. This is odd for many reasons, as Mary Margrave uses greengrass to protect her, to create a semblance of uniformity in her world. Her hands cannot be dirty, and not just because she allows him to wallow in filth. She does not see blood as dirty, only providence. There are 4 days left to the reckoning of this world created by Our Lady in Green that has existed for so long, and yet only as long as her original betrayal, in the universe where the donut shop stands. Greengrass velvet's death is not a doorway, but someone does stand, searching, waiting, wanting. They are a cup to be filled. They are delicate, and yet they are mad as a March hare for their loneliness, their grief, and all that which is a byproduct of this world. The life they knew was stolen from them, but they have never known life at all. Greengrass was not stolen. His death was providence, and by the time Mary Margrave finds him, her own time will be much shorter than she'll ever have believed. She is not as immortal as she appears to be. 4 days have also passed since Lewis Swan last saw his youngest brother Truist. Lewis Swan does not know where Truist has gone, and there is a fleeting hope in the doomed soothsayer's chest. Only a tiny message from deep within when Lewis collapses onto the folding chair within his ice cream truck, that Truist has run away, has found a way out of the cursed world the Swans live in. Lewis Swan remembers when he accepted that he was cursed, even though he could not have envisioned anything so horrible as the sticky sweetness on his hands, the cloying sound of that squelching munch as people devoured their cones before him. Gods and goddesses, he detests ice cream. He prayed to the Lady in Green once. He thought perhaps she was bringing his punishment down upon his head, though he did not know why. He did not understand how bloody glockenspiel bells would end up in his locker at school, why someone would care enough to frame him. He did not understand how he could not rhythmically chant with the bells. He did not understand the carrots in his lunchbox, those soggy, orange, tasteless logs. He did not understand when his mother walked herself into the sea. His whole life she had chanted the same story, that of Annabel Lee. He remembers his mother, and how her hair always smelled of sea-water, and how a breeze seemed to move within and without her. He remembers once when she was hanging laundry in the backyard when the dryer was broken, and his brain, for a moment, just a moment, flipped. Something flipped. He knew then, a thing he knew he could never say, that there was something wrong in this world, that they were too light, and she especially too effervescent. Her pockets were weighed down with rocks, but that was not nearly enough to crest beneath the waves. She walked 2 miles and gasped for breath, but found her own way out. Lewis Swan knows and remembers all this, dares not say anything taboo, dares not confront the voided, slack-faced people that beg him for something sweet. What he does know is that his youngest brother, this truest, was born to keep him in chains. The freedom, paradoxically, of keeping him in these customer service chains were so he would not stray, would not find magic nor vengeance. This purity, this bedraggled Lewis Swan, is less doomed for the love of a brother. Lewis Swan made no deal in this world, and so his punishment, in 4 days' time, will be less. He does not yet know he will have a chance to be a hero. Is Lewis Swan brave when he is not evil? Mary Margrave brought Julie Cumberland, mayor but interloper from another land, a cup of tea, as always. They have a game they play because Julie knows those cups of tea are poisoned. They have a tint of red to them, and the smell of magic which is not magic, but which are things from the earth meant to intervene. This, dear listeners, must not be mistaken for the work of trouble. Your charge may blame things of the earth for things which come from trouble, but the concept is a struggle for their earthen-bound minds. Many charges exist without ephemeral being. They know only immediacy. They know only vice and consequence. A part of the nuance of your task which you undertake is to help them understand so much of the threads that keep them contained. They are chained, yes, but only to each other, and only because a community of each, a surrounding, a fellowship, is how those who live on earth and on dirt and with gravity may survive. When they cannot rely on each other, and in frenzy and rage, they murder. When they break bonds of community, or they are broken by wicked tongues, trouble comes to them. Trouble comes not in the deception, but in the acts that follow. Trouble is a shadow of fear that paralyzes and subverts beauty. There is beauty in those roots Mary brings, even the poisonous ones. It is beauty because nature is not of trouble. It merely is. It is by the hand, this hand being so graciously withered and gnarled with the power of black avarice, how Mary Margrave poisons the tea, but never the cup. Julie sometimes switches cups in the space without drinking, sometimes distracts with pleasantries, sometimes pretends to clumsiness. Today, Julie drinks without thinking, while looking over something. Her vision goes blurry. She doesn't notice it at first, since that's the nature of the color of the world, but the blurriness continues, intensifies. What will Mary Margrave do now, before she dies? Because the act she sets in motion here will doom her, and the act she does not know she and Greengrass have set in motion will shake the core of the world. It is still now, as he stands there, in the breezeway. He was sure there was nothing there but a wall before, wasn't there? It was brick and solid, and kept the gentle winds even from blowing against his face. He'd never even imagined a thing in the shadows at night, and yet, how long had he stood there, looking at the shed with the unlocked door where the wall had been? How long had he stood there, stock still, hearing that sound, that sounded human? It was too low-pitched to be a chattering quail, and he'd only heard the sound of a quail once in the great forest anyways. A forest in his dreams. No, a swamp, a memory, something. What was it? There was dust. There was warmth, then dust, then cold. There was the feeling of something grabbing, wrapping. No, that was birth, wasn't it? There it is again. The noise. That door. The door just on its hinges, unlocked. He'd stood there long enough that a fly from Greengrass's dead body had landed and flitted away from his cheek, but the door and the darkness and the noise, what was it? It was unholy. His body told him that, and yet every half hour or so he turned a few more degrees toward it and away from the world he knew, from the gardens and the sanctuary of the Green Lady's doorway. Dear listeners, the great and grand Reverend of Our Lady in Green has fallen. He does not know yet what he will do or has done, but he marches slowly, consequentially, each footfall upon the path of cobblestone and grass to something. He walks, and his hand reaches for the handle, gripping. The voice inside doesn't change. It is parched. It is... What is it? He knows the voice. It is the voice of himself, falling, at midnight. It is the voice of that dream again, something. A lifetime where he'd been a strong man of some sort. His biceps had burned. He'd worn something around his waist that made things heavy at his hips, made him... No, that was a dream. He was anchored to nothing but the lady. His collar grew tighter, choking, as he wrenched open the door and saw in the shadows. You wanted to try the caramel apple flavor? His voice is flat. That is Lewis Swan's voice at the end of the day, in the final hour. He has been in this ice cream van for how many hours now? He can't stand the whining of his siblings, wanting to know where Truist went. When Truist would return, should they go out and find him and reclaim him and drag him back down into the quicksand and anonymity and pain and nothingness that is the life of the Swan family of Surf City? Lewis Swan's response is to work, to entomb himself. And so he thinks nothing of Michael Charles Taffet approaching the window in his little stationary ice cream truck, parked on the same street, on the same side of the town square, with the Founder's bricks so nearby, and one solitary nearby bench with a light post atop it, now flickering. No, that's not my proposition, Michael says in the most fluid of voices. I hear you've had some home trouble. There is no trouble, Lewis lies. Only ice cream. There has been talk, Michael says viciously. There is always talk. I can help you find the boy. I wish him the best. The loss of a child is something to be feared, Lewis, Michael says, and his voice is full of the ice of a cadaver. Is it? Lewis says. I will miss him. He ran away. Michael's voice implies something Lewis can barely and scarcely comprehend, and he finds a little business card with an address scratched in on the back in pencil, with a touch of rusted oil just on the edges. Is that all for you? Lewis asks. That depends, Michael says, standing there as he lets the ice cream waffle cone filled with 2 scoops of salted caramel fall to the ground. On what you do next. Surf City is an audio work of John MacDonald and John MacDonald Productions. It is meant for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to advise anyone on lifestyle, health, or spiritual/philosophical issues of there or any time. All opinions expressed are held by the characters and in some cases the creator of Surf City and Surf City Donuts, John MacDonald. Season 2's cosmic narrator is Jack Wicks.